What do you think of when you hear the word media? Is it Twitter or Facebook, maybe CNN or Fox News? Whatever the case, its implications have drastically changed over time. Media throughout American history is always evolving, and each era has a distinct cultural shift because of it. I've done extensive research in preparation for this speech through reading journals and articles, etc., so the information I present is all credible. There's no question that media dictates nearly every aspect of our lives, so it's important to understand its impact, what brought us here, and why. Today, I will inform you about the stark contrast between media in the 1800s, the 1960s and 70s, and media in the 21st century. Let's begin with media in the 1800s. They were a time of rapid growth amid the Industrial Revolution. As the population increased, so did the demand for an interconnectedness in society. Specifically, newspapers emerged, creating an outlet for this interconnectedness to occur. In a periodical for the magazine Reason, Anthony Comagna discusses the exponential rise in the amount of papers being read. More people read papers in America by 1822 than anywhere else in the world, making the U.S. the most literate country in world history at the time. Because of the newfound demand for news, it also allowed for embellishments to occur. What we now know as fake news was once dubbed yellow journalism, and it was a major problem back in the day. James Murphy's article for New American states that unnoteworthy news is essentially yellow journalism that was news that was exaggerated and scandalized beyond its original newsworthiness. So hopefully by now most of you have heard about Samuel Morse, the inventor of Morse code. He also invented the telegraph, which was first successfully sent on May 24, 1844, from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, Maryland. This invention was indicative of the technological innovations to come, such as the text message and email. So now that we've learned a little bit about the 1800s, let's move on to the mid-20th century. The 1960s and 70s were a time where media, specifically news media, became a product of television almost exclusively. The JFK assassination serves as a great example for the impact that TV had on news coverage, and it demonstrated the characterizations of modern communication. In The Assassination of President Kennedy, a preliminary report on public reactions and behavior, Sheetsley and Fieldman write that within 1 hour, 68% of Americans had heard about the shooting, and within just 2 hours, 92% of Americans had heard about it, half of which were from TV. Later on in the decade, the Vietnam War capitalized on the effect that TV has on news coverage. What we now know as the television war tarnished the relationship between government officials and the press to the point where the horrific images and the graphic scenes on the television screen enraged citizens, and President Johnson and President Nixon both declared that the press was the enemy of the people, according to a 2010 academic journal in diplomatic history. Also, Walter Cronkite, who was then America's most trusted man in America, he was a CBS News anchor, he publicly showed his dismay in a testimony which allowed other Americans to express their disapproval of the war as well. In a country where the public has the responsibility, where the public's responsibility to seek the truth is so intertwined with the Constitution, the Watergate scandal is perhaps the best example as to why. These two men, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, were two journalists for the Washington Post at the time and were responsible for the breaking of the Watergate scandal, and they brought it to the public eye. Because of their mission to exploit the wrongdoings of President Nixon's administration, it gave way to the most important developments in reporting possibly ever. In an interview, they said, in response to the success of their work, they said, "It's always easier to tell the truth about someone else. That's obviously what a lot of reporting is. You get someone to tell not what they did, but what someone else did," in an interview for Library Journal. Because of their work, investigative journalism became much more prominent in the field, and it transformed the system from journalists just being able to report what they're told to them actually going out and finding the truth for themselves. President Nixon's resignation, which broadcast live on television, proved this impact that truthful journalism can have. So now that we've covered media in the mid-20th century, let's move on to the 21st century, the 2000s. The 2000s held some of the most distinct cultural shifts in history. Perhaps the biggest moment occurred on September 11th, 2001. 9/11 served as new territory for press coverage because footage aired from the attacks almost instantly as it was taken. and unlike Vietnam, people were able to watch firsthand the destruction that occurred. Because of this live coverage, devastation was felt by all the people, even if they weren't there per se. With the advent of the new millennia, the 21st century brought technological innovations such as Microsoft and Apple. What also came along with that were developments in media across the board, such as Netflix, email, and of course, social media. Social media infiltrated nearly every aspect of society. In a report by Andrew Perrin for the Pew Research Center, he states that the rise has affected the way people get and share information about health, civic life, news consumption, communities, teen life, parenting, dating, and even people's level of stress. In the decades before us, all of these things could be attained from multiple physical outlets, but now they can all be attained from simply one device. The events of the 21st century thus far have been unlike any other in the preceding eras. So today I've informed you about the media in the 1800s, the 1960s and 70s, and in the 21st century. If you ever find yourself discussing the media, I hope you take into account its evolution throughout American history. Media theorist and Canadian philosopher Marshall McLuhan once said, "The medium is the message." The ways in which we present and are presented information in itself is the true definition of media. Thank you.